So let's look at the second part of this section, having to do with the idea that knowledge is recollection. This is a very famous doctrine in all of Plato. It comes up in a few different places. And it is brought up by Sebes at the top of page 63 as a possible additional argument proving that the soul has some sort of existence apart from the body, at least before it inhabits the body, before life. The notion being all knowledge is recollection, and if we are recollecting something, remembering something, and if it's something that we did not learn in our current earthly life, that implies that the soul had a previous existence in which it learned these things, was somehow forgotten at birth, and now in our earthly existence we recollect those things through talking about them, being reminded of them in certain ways, through the senses or through discussion. So if Socrates can establish that knowledge is recollection, it would seem to be a further argument for at least the pre-existence of the soul. That is, that the soul existed before the body. What does he mean by recollection? Let's see. Bottom page 63. Socrates says, I mean what I may illustrate by the following instance. The knowledge of a lyre, that is the musical instrument, L-Y-R-E-E, lyre, is not the same as the knowledge of a man. True. And yet, what is the feeling of lovers when they recognize a lyre or a garment or anything else which the beloved has been in the habit of using? Do not they, from knowing the lyre, form in the mind's eye an image of the youth to whom the lyre belongs? And this is recollection. That is, that we recollect things by having memories triggered by our experience of other things. We associate somebody with particular objects, so when we see that object, we are reminded of that person. This is an analogy, I believe, for what he really is getting at. Continuing on page 64, and this sort of thing, he said, is recollection, and is most commonly a process of recovering that which has been forgotten through time and inattention. Very true. Well, and may you not also, from seeing the picture of a horse or a lyre, remember a man, and from the picture of Simmias, you may be led to remember Sebes, or you may be led also to the recollection of Simmias himself. And in all these cases, the recollection may be derived from things either like or unlike. That is true. And when the recollection is derived from like things, then there is sure to be another question, which is whether the likeness of that which is recollected is in any way defective or not. So different things remind us of other things. And sometimes the reason that we're reminded of something is because we see something that is like that thing. Say that we are reminded, everybody has an experience of knowing somebody who sort of looks like a famous person. And when you see that person, you think of the famous person. I've had students like that. It's actually quite distracting when your student is like a dead ringer for some Hollywood actor. It's actually a pain in the butt, but you learn to live with it. Well, what is he getting at here? Towards the bottom of page 64. And shall we proceed a step further and affirm that there is such a thing as a quality, not of wood with wood or of stone with stone, but that, and over and above this, there is a quality in the abstract. That is, this abstract notion of equality, the concept of equality. And do we know the nature of this abstract essence? To be sure. And whence did we obtain this knowledge? That is, where did we get our knowledge of abstract concepts like equality? That's not the equality of two different coins. This quarter is somehow equal in some sense to this quarter, but the whole notion of equality, the abstract universal idea. Where did we get this? What Socrates describes is that, we get this in a mysterious way. Certainly, we would not know these ideas unless we had real, particular sensory experiences of things like similar quarters or equal quarters. But he points out something that's very crucial for his argument, and that is that, these quarters aren't really equal. They're not equal at all. They have, one's an old-fashioned quarter, one is one of those newfangled state quarters. They have different markings on them. They're not absolutely equal. They have different wear marks on them, probably weigh in some way tiny bit different. So the sensible things that we call equal aren't really equal at all. So where do we get that notion that they fall short? Socrates says in the middle of page 65, are they equals in the same sense as absolute equality, or do they fall short of this in a measure? Well, they fall short of absolute equality. And must we not allow that when I, or anyone, look at any object and perceive that the object aims at being some other thing, but falls short of and cannot attain to it, he who makes this observation must have had previous knowledge of that to which, as he says, the other, although similar, was inferior. So what he's saying is that in order to recognize that the equality between two quarters is equal but falls short of perfect equality, that we must already have had that notion of perfect equality. And this goes not just for things like equality, but for things like the good, the beautiful, the just, the holy, that each one of these forms or essences represents a kind of an in itself, an absolute version of things like the just, the beautiful, the equal, the good, and that we could not have learned them through our particular experience, because our particular experience, these things always fall short of the perfect version, and we recognize that they fall short, so the implication is we must have known them before. And so the essence of something, the essence of beauty, the essence of the good, the essence of the just, the essence of the equal, represents an ideal, the form. The Greek word is eidos, and maybe I'll put some supplementary material up about that. That this knowledge of these things must have been gotten before we were born, since we seem to be remembering these things, the memory stimulated by our sensory experience, and that these pure ideas represent proof that the soul must have existed in some form before it was born into the body or inhabited the body. Now, this theory of the forms, I don't know how well I've explained it right here. It's not the last time we'll talk about it. I think we'll do a summation at the end of the Phaedo of its main themes, in which perhaps we'll say a little bit more. And certainly as the course goes on, the return to this idea of these absolutes. Not so much that we recollect them, but that they somehow exist, and for Plato represent the only true knowledge and the only true reality, will become a continuing theme in the course.